Kicking things off, we have Sriram Vishwanath. Sriram is a software engineer with a passion for all things privacy and well-engineered software. He's also an ex-thought worker. Recently, he pursued his passion for privacy and completed his MS in privacy engineering from Carnegie Mellon University in the United States. So Sriram will discuss about state of privacy in ad tech solutions, post third-party cookie deprecations. So over to you, Sriram. So we are really excited to hear your thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jishia. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Kicking off this track. Yeah, so let me share my screen and then we can start. Just give me 1 second. I hope you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So, yeah, so today's talk is going to be about the state of privacy. This is a security conference, but privacy is very, very intricately related to security. So this is also quite, I'd say, quite relevant in today's world of data privacy regulations and all kinds of things. So we're going to be discussing about the state of privacy in ad tech, more specifically, or advertisement tech solutions. Post third-party cookie deprecation. We'll understand what all these words mean in the slides that are coming up. So briefly, this research was part of my final year project at Carnegie Mellon University. So I'd like to thank my project team members and my professor for enabling this research. I couldn't have done this by myself, so thank you to them. Briefly about me, I'm Sriram. I love all things tech. I love all things privacy. And I also love music. I play music. I used to play in the ThoughtWorks band as well. I am an ex-thought worker. Yeah, that's hi to everyone who's there. Yeah. So before I move on, I would like to read out this quote from a recent article in The Atlantic, which is a magazine, online magazine, which says, when everything we do online is data to be harvested, resignation is easy. But there is a better way to think about digital privacy. My hope through this talk is to leave you with this hope that although resignation is very easy, which is like accept all cookies when you get like a cookie banner on a website, but try to think of a better way to think about digital privacy. So first, let's talk about, first I have a few sections which kind of build up the foundation of what I'm going to talk about before I actually step into ad tech, because there is some like fundamental concepts that we need to all get on the same page. One of them is cookies. So cookies are basically text files. Initially, when cookies started, the initial purpose of cookies was to, let's say, I don't know, change the language of your web page, or I don't know, count the number of visits that you've done to a web page, or something very naive. Cookies have grown quite a lot from then to now, and now they're used for all kinds of things, which we'll look at. There are two main kinds of cookies. One is what is called a first party cookie, which is basically the cookie that belongs to the website that you're visiting currently, which matches the domain on the URL of your browser. And then there is third party cookie, which is basically cookies which belong to another website, which is not matching the one in your URL. And these are what are called third party cookies because they belong to another domain and they are tracking you or holding some information about you, but they are tied to another domain. And this is basically what is used in advertising most of the time. Third-party cookies enable personalization, ad personalization, which is what the initial goal was, but now it's turned into this huge tracking data market where a person is tracked across all these multiple websites, YouTube, X, Amazon, Facebook, Google search, TikTok, Instagram, all these websites, which give a very holistic perspective of what a person is online and what their identity is. And third-party cookies easily enable this. And this is called the wild, wild west in some sense, actually. So what are the uses of third-party cookies? I'll just go over this in a little bit of detail because this is important for ad tech. So in advertisements, there are these 6 different use cases that enable ad tech through third-party cookies. The first one is identity resolution, which basically means I can identify you as an individual through some kind of an identity. The second one is frequency capping, which is how many times have you seen a specific type of ad? Because nobody wants to show an ad, the same ad, 1,000 number of times. They want to cap it at a certain number. Attribution is like, did you click on an ad or did you make a purchase from an ad that was shown to you? Uh, yeah, sorry. And fourth is audience activation, which basically means, can I put you inside of a group or an audience? For example, people who love football. Can I put you in this group which says people who love football based on your interests, preferences, and behaviors? And can I advertise you based on that interest group? Uh, Fifth is incremental measurement, which is like, can I measure the difference between how much more effective my new ad is versus the ad that I previously showed you? Uh, Basically, some changes in there. And lastly, retargeting. And this is something like, for example, if let's say you bought a Dyson air purifier 1 year ago, and now they've come up with a new air purifier, they could re-advertise to you and say, oh, we've come up with a new air purifier. That's basically, they know that you already purchased with them. Now they're again advertising to you. And this is based on them creating an audience with you. So now, why are we talking about this topic and why right now? Why is this important right now? Most of the major browsers have been on this third-party cookie blocking spree. So this was started in 2017 by Apple's Safari. They were the first one, as usually Apple is, in this privacy preserving race. 2018 is when Mozilla actually blocked third-party cookies with enhanced tracking protection. 2023 is when Firefox added this thing called total cookie protection, which is much more than just third-party cookie blocking. They actually introduced per domain cookie storage. Google is also doing something similar with this. Google's supposed to deprecate third-party cookies by 2024. They've been moving this deadline for quite a long time now. They're supposed to do it in 2024. Let's see, fingers crossed what they do. This is the deadline that all the advertisers are like going crazy about. So why are they going crazy about this? This is because Chrome browser as a browser has 64% market share in the browser market. Uh, the browser that's supposed to be privacy preserving, Brave, which is what I use, which is also based on Chromium, doesn't even figure in this number in this list. Uh, Firefox is very, very less, which is also privacy oriented. Safari is 20%, but then Apple controls everything on Safari. So Chrome represents a huge market for all the advertising tech companies out there. 52% is the drop in revenue that is expected when third-party cookies go out. This basically the effect of how much tracking they will not be able to do because of like the third-party cookie going away. On the right side is basically a research done by this online intelligence website called Insider Intelligence. They are a marketing advertising intelligence company. They did this research in 2020 where they asked people what is the biggest challenge that you will face in today's ad ecosystem. Third-party deprecation is like expressed by more than 50%. This is in 2020, but then even last couple of weeks, it's still exactly the same. People are still worried about exactly the same thing because this is the biggest change in this ad tech ecosystem in a long, long time. This is quote from one of the publishers in a recent summit. This was like 2 weeks ago, I think. I'll just read this out so that it gives you some idea of why we are talking about this. It says, we are all trying to figure out how this is going to play out. There is an infinite amount of inventory on Chrome, so they don't have to try Safari. They're not really seeing the issue yet. They're not feeling the pain yet. So this is just to give you an idea of like why people are worried about this. So now coming to ads, people keep talking about ads that are creepy, ads that are following you, etc., etc. So how do we tell when an ad is a good ad or a bad ad? Is there some kind of an easy way to tell this? So I'll start with this quote, which says, "I know it when I see it." This phrase was used by a Supreme Court justice in the United States in 1964, where he was ruling on a case where they were testing whether something is seen or not obscene. And the judge basically said, there's nothing I can say apart from like, I know it when I see it. I think this can be said about ads as well. There is no like automated test or threshold test that can be applied to ads. There are two main kinds of ads in at a high level. One is called a behavioral ad and then there's contextual ad. On the right is contextual, which talks about. So I was reading an article on TechCrunch, which talks about uh, ransomware gang stealing credit card data, and on the top is an ad from a company which protects organizations from data breach, which is very, very contextual. On the left is me reading cricket news on NDTV, and then on the top is an iPhone 15 ad, which has got no relation to cricket, but then it's based on behavioral, which is based on, like, let's say, what I searched online. So these are the two main kinds of ads. Behavior ads are the ones that are considered more privacy invasive because they are tracking you, your behavior, your history, etc., etc. Contextual is considered non-privacy invasive because it's based on the content that you're reading right now. So, what are the other harms that we can see online done by ads? So, on the left is a 2022 ad safety report from Google where they clearly say that we have long blocked ads targeting and personalization for young kids and also anybody under 18. Kids are the most vulnerable population online. And on the right is a research just last month or a month ago, actually, where an ad research company called Adalytics, they released a report where they said YouTube clearly tracks kids online on these YouTube channels called Made for Kids, and they are advertising them with brands like Kimberly Clark, General Motors, Procter Gamble, IKEA, all kinds of things, and they're still tracking them. So you can see like what they say 1 year ago and what they're doing 1 year later is not the same thing. And this is a quote from Google in one of these articles, which says, "What happens post click is the advertiser's issue." So Google doesn't feel responsible for anything that happens after somebody clicks on an ad. Yeah. This is on the left is the latest Meta ads policy with respect to political ads. The policy says this policy applies to United States, Brazil, Israel, and Italy. We know that next year there is elections in the United States as well as in India. That is 2024 elections. Uh, the ads that are discouraged are premature claims of victory, claiming into question the legitimacy of an election, and discouraging people from voting in an election. These are only disabled in these four countries. In India, this might be allowed, which is quite scary to see actually. On the right top is the Twitter Ad Transparency Center. This center used to give insights behind like what ad was funded by which political party. This center was closed in January 2021. So Twitter no longer gives transparency around who funded their ad when it comes to political ads. Just a month ago, X, which is Twitter, started re they re-enabled political advertising worldwide. So this applies to both United States and India, and also all other countries where there are elections at this point of time. This is quite scary as well because it affects us as a society and not as an individual. So because most of the times when we look at privacy, we look at it as an individual, but then privacy cuts across us as a group and as a society as well. Lastly, this was also 15 days ago when it says X turns to Google to sell programmatic ads as it struggles to regain ad dollars. So X has been losing credibility in the ad market and also losing ad dollars. So basically, X is now turned to Google as a customer. So this shows you how all these big tech companies are so intertwined. When, like, let's say at one point of time, Twitter used to do their own advertising. Now it's turning onto Google to get ads. So now let's talk about privacy. And how do we talk about privacy? It's important to know, like, when I say my privacy has been violated, or this is not a good thing, how do we even communicate privacy to another person? This is quite important, because privacy is just not about like somebody stealing your secret. It's more about like what harm does it do post somebody steals your secret. Because as soon as somebody does a privacy harm to you, this is like a front line to a lot of other harms that includes manipulation, addiction, uh, man, uh, harm to your credit, harm to your chances of getting a job, harm to your mental health, healthcare, informed consent. So it affects your disclosure. It affects like decisions made by you online, and also it affects decision made for you by online companies. Uh, so in the privacy world, privacy is usually expressed in terms of taxonomies. This is one of the latest taxonomies that has been put forth by these two people, Daniel Solov and Daniel Keith Citron. Both are law faculty in colleges in the United States. What they have said is these are like the 7 different forms of harms. The reason why this is essential is because this is essential for legislation and regulatory enforcement. Because if you cannot express why you've been harmed or how you've been harmed, it's hard for somebody in the court of law to understand you and empathize with you. I'll just go through these harms because these are important to be able to relate. So first is physical harm. So this an example of this is like somebody surveilling you or stalking you and because they know your address that's been leaked somewhere. Uh, Second is economic harm. This is an example of this is somebody, let's say in a data breach, your credit card details were leaked, and then now they have like a fake credit card of you. They can take money on your behalf. uh, Discrimination harm. This is, for example, based on your race, religion, gender. Maybe some website shows you the price of a product differently as compared to maybe some other person. This happens. This happens quite a lot actually, especially with AI coming in. Uh, Reputational harm is when let's say you're on LinkedIn, but then some automated process starts sending notifications even without you knowing. Uh, it basically it damages your reputation on a professional website like LinkedIn just because uh, the website never asked you for showing those notifications. Uh, Relationship harms, of course, if somebody else gets to know some sensitive information about you without your consent, that will lead to relationship harms. Psychological harms is like a good example of this is all kinds of notifications that you get on your phone. Maybe some app never allows you to control them, and basically it disturbs your peace or mental peace or whatever work you're doing. So it's kind. And lastly, autonomy harms, which is facial recognition is a very good example of this. So I'm just going to. This happened this year at Madison Square Garden, which is a sports venue in the US, where they used facial recognition to keep enemy lawyers out of the venue, so they weren't even allowed to go into the venue. Uh, this is a this points to all kinds of harms: reputational harm, psychological harm, economic discrimination, and also chilling effect. So if you're walking in and if somebody does this to you, I'm sure you will be very, very, I don't know, disturbed in some sense. So now that we've spoken about how to talk about privacy, what are good and bad ads, what are cookies, etc. Now we are ready to jump into the ad tech ecosystem and look at all the different participants that make up this complex ecosystem. So this is a slightly complex diagram. I'll break this down. So on the right side of the ad tech ecosystem is consumers, that is us. On the left side are brands which want to advertise themselves, right? The right side is called the sell side because they are selling ad spaces. So, for example, Washington Post is a news website. They have some spaces on their website. They want to sell ads based on the people that are visiting those websites and watching different news on their website. The left side, which is where the brands exist and where the advertisers exist, that is called the buy side, because they are buying all these ad spaces, which is usually called inventory, and they are basically selling them ads based on targeted behavior that they can identify on these websites. All of this is orchestrated by what is called the intermediaries, which is right in the center. This includes people like ad tech exchanges. Also, this includes programmatic bidding, which is what is used for matching the the bid price that's coming from the sell side and the buy side. It's almost like going to an auction. It's called second price bidding, if anybody's interested. Uh, and this red line, which goes from the consumer all the way to the ad tech intermediaries, is what we are talking about in this presentation, which is companies that are directly collecting third party cookies directly from the consumer. They don't go through this publisher interface, they go through this red line directly. So, this red line is basically going away with Chrome deprecating third party cookies. So, now this is leading to a single point of entry for all kinds of data that can be collected from a consumer. So, right now, the publishers collect data, but also there is this other back channel that is there. So this back channel is going to go away. So the publisher becomes almost like this single point of entry. So everybody is fighting for the single point of entry right now. And if you have any questions at any point of time, please ask away and let me know if I'm going too fast, too slow at any point of time. Any feedback is welcome. Uh, So when we look at the ad tech ecosystem, like I said, the consumers are the ones who are on the right and the brands are on the left. What do consumers want? Consumers want relevant advertising that's personalized, and also they want transparency and choice. They don't want something that's they want to understand why they are being shown an ad. They want to have a choice in what kind of ad should be shown to me, what should not be shown to me, etc. On the other side, brands want brand safety and they want people to come to their website from the publisher's website. So, for example, if I am on Washington Post and if there's a Mercedes Benz ad, Mercedes Benz wants you to go to their website. And also, they want to communicate the value that they're providing through those ads on the publisher website. On the other side, then there are these ad tech participants in the ad tech ecosystem, which is advertisers and publishers. Advertisers on the left, publishers on the right. Advertisers want increased brand awareness. They want sales and profits. They want ROI. They want campaign effectiveness. Uh, Publishers, on the other hand, want a loyal audience. They want to sell their ad space for the best price. They want to prevent fraud ad, and they want very, very strong attribution. That is, they want to know which ad led to what kind of, let's say, buy or conversion event. So now we've spoken about all kinds of foundational stuff, ad tech, what are the different participants, cookies, how do we communicate privacy, all these things. Now let's look at how can we talk about privacy, incorporating privacy into this ecosystem and what we built. Right? So this is so security is generally equated with privacy, especially when it comes to marketing products. The background image, there are two ads, billboards. One is from WhatsApp, one is from Apple. WhatsApp is famous for what is called privacy washing, which is basically using security as a way to say we are private when they're not. So WhatsApp encrypts all messages, but it doesn't encrypt metadata, which is famously been criticized for that. Uh, on the top is an Apple ad which says privacy. That's iPhone. I also have an iPhone. Almost privacy people talk about iPhones, but then again, like this is called walled garden privacy, which is basically Apple saying something is private, and you basically have to trust them on their word and whatever they are doing. And it's very hard to verify the claims and how they're using the data. So the quote is basically while security is needed for privacy, not all security is privacy. And we'll look at this in more detail in some of these solutions. So when we talk about privacy, privacy is all about data at the end of the day. And there are two, let's say, facets that you can look at privacy from. One is called input privacy, and then the second is output privacy. Input privacy is when, let's say, multiple parties want to collaborate and do some analysis on their data without showing each other their private data. So this is called input because multiple people are inputting data to some kind of processing without showing each other the data. And then there is something called output privacy, which is when the data is released or uh, queried by someone, it should not have anything that can be identified or re-identified from the output. So we want to conceal the identity of individuals when we are releasing the data. This is at a very, very high level. All the privacy tech can be divided into these two kind of categories. So now let's look at some kind of threat model. So security has been famously the most famous threat model that's out there for security is Stride from Microsoft. Stride stands for all these six things. So spoofing is pretending to be someone else than who you are. Tampering is changing or modifying things when they're in transit or in memory or on disk. Repudiation is claiming to say like you did not do something when you actually did it. Information disclosure is unauthorized release of information. Denial of service is exhausting or bringing down a service, basically making it unavailable. And lastly, elevation of privilege is allowing someone to do what they should not be doing or what they are not authorized to do. So this is the security threat model. This has been applied for a long time. There is a corresponding privacy threat model. That's what we are going to look at, which is called Linden, Linddun. This was formulated by people at a university in Netherlands called KU Leuven. So these are the seven different threats that privacy threat modeling involves. So I'll just go through each one of them. First one is linking, which is basically given two different data sets. If you exist in both the data sets, I should be able to link you from one data set to the other. Identifying is very clear. It's similar to the security threat model, which is like, can I identify you as an individual? Non-repudiation, this is exactly the opposite of the security threat, which is being able to claim to an individual is a threat to privacy. This is exactly the opposite of repudiation, which is in the Stride model. Detecting, which is can I observe your interactions and figure out who you are? An example of this is like fingerprinting or something like that, or side channel observation. Data disclosure is excessive collection of data, or something like a data breach is an example of data disclosure. Unawareness and unintervenability. This is basically not informing you about our policies or informing you inaccurately about the data collection policies or the processing of it. This is tied to like privacy policies, cookie banners, etc., etc. And lastly, non-compliance, which is deviating from security and data best practices. So, given that we have a privacy threat model, let's look at some of the technologies that are currently available both in theory and in practice. So one of the basic privacy enhancing technologies is pseudonymization and anonymization. Pseudonymization is basically replacing private information with some kind of a replacement, which is generic, which is what you can see in the middle. Anonymous is basically doing a completely irreversible transformation where you cannot even identify, even with additional pieces of information, you cannot identify who this person is. GDPR says that the principle of data protection should not apply to anonymous information. GDPR is the most prominent data protection regulation. It is almost like a template for every other regulation around the world, and it's considered one of the strictest as well. On the right, you can see the spectrum of data privacy. So the more anonymized you get on the right and the less anonymized is on the left. The important thing to note is the more anonymized you get, the more utility of the data that you will use. What do we mean by utility? Utility means what value do they get? What value does an ad tech company get out of the ad? So the more anonymized you will go, the less value that an ad tech company will get from this data and the less utility to the data. This is a loaded slide, but I'll try to go through this one by one. These are the current privacy enhancing technologies available either in a very theoretical setting or in a way that's not really productionized at this point of time. So let's start with differential privacy. Differential privacy is a solution, is a technique where we add probabilistic noise to a data set to make sure that and no individual can be identified in the data set. Second is federated learning. This is where we distribute the learning across multiple parties so that private data doesn't have to be shared from those parties. Famously, Apple used this to identify which emoji is most used on their iOS devices by running local machine learning models on all kinds of iPhones and then collecting the weights from the individual iPhones in a central model and then building on that. Homomorphic encryption is where you do computation on encrypted data without decrypting it. So it's never decrypted. This has this is a really promising technology, but then it's got huge performance and cost implications as well. Fourth is key anonymity, which is also called group anonymity, where I am similar to k minus one other people in a group, and this is also used to improve the privacy of the data. Fifth is secure multi-party computation, or SMPC. This is where multiple parties come together to solve some problem where no one party knows all the information. Then there is zero knowledge proofs, where a user can prove something without revealing sensitive information. Second last is secure hardware. This has been championed by both Intel as well as AMD and Apple, where they provide on-chip secure enclave or secure environments where you can run code that is attested and that cannot be modified or that cannot be inspected from outside while it's in execution. This prevents like any kind of unauthorized access, and this is done at a hardware chip level, CPU level, basically. Lastly, it's synthetic data, which is basically generating fake data. But the thing is, it's not just fake data. It has statistical properties that are similar to the original data. So it's very close to the original data. This has become really popular with the coming of AI and with the popularity of AI and ML models, especially large language models. So now we've looked at all kinds of foundational technologies. Let's look at the alternatives that are upcoming. And these are the solutions that are being proposed in the ad tech market today. These are the three different solutions. We'll start from the left. So the first one is ID solutions. These are basically based on email of the person or something unique about the person. And they basically hashed email that is maybe encrypted. And this is usually based on consent. So there is something like a cookie consent box. Only authorized partners can decrypt this identifier in the ad tech market. So we'll look at this in more detail as we go forward. This is just a brief idea of these three solutions. Google's privacy sandbox that's been rolled out just last month by Google. This is cohort or interest-based advertisement, which is basically like not identifying you as an individual, but you as part of an interest group. For example, like I said, you like football or something. That's what Privacy Sandbox is based on. These are Google has released W3C standards for all these things. Firefox and Safari do not support these standards at all. They've criticized all these standards because this whole technology is built with Chrome as its center. So obviously they won't support. Lastly, the privacy enhancing technologies that we looked at just before. Now there are companies that are coming up who are offering these technologies as a service. So basically helping productionize the use of these services because these services are really, really technically involved. You need a high level of expertise to be able to understand and use them. So there are companies which are helping other companies use these technologies without having to basically providing some sort of abstraction on top of these technologies. So let's look at ID solutions, which is the first kind of solution. The ID solutions can be divided into two main types. One is deterministic, which is basically like your email or something similar. This has been one example of this is UID 2.0 by this company called the Trade Desk. They are the biggest or one of the biggest companies that are doing this. The second is probabilistic ID, which is based on fingerprint. Uh, Encryption is used as privacy washing, similar to not similar to WhatsApp, but in a same sense. If you read this part here, it says trusted participants can access decryption key. So what they're saying is we'll hash something, we'll encrypt it, and then we can give the decryption key to somebody. But as you know, like if I have an email, if it's hashed, and if you encrypt it, that hashed email is good enough for me to track you, right? It's even though it's hashed, it doesn't mean I cannot track you. Hash is consistent. Like if I hash your email like 1,000 times, if I'm not using a salt, it's going to be the same thing. Right? So yeah, Privacy Sandbox is with Chrome browser as a central uh, player where both the demand side, which is basically the marketing and the advertisers, as well as the supply side, which is the browser in this case, both manage the advertisements. So for example, in this case, a person visits an e-commerce website like Amazon. The demand side will create an interest group saying that, oh, you clicked on a smart TV. So let me create an interest group inside the Chrome browser for you for the smart TV. So after this point, when I go to, let's say, I don't know, the Washington Post or something on here, I will be shown an ad for smart TV because the browser has my interest knowledge created by the demand side. The important point to note is that this feature is an opt-in to the feature, not a per website or a per publisher level, which is where regulations are struggling with at this point of time. Because all the previous technologies were per website. That's why the cookie banner and all that stuff. This is not per website anymore. This is at a browser level. I'll quickly skip this one. This is a little more detail on Privacy Sandbox. But I'd like to point this out. Privacy Sandbox was rolled out last month, September 23. EFF, which is Electronic Frontier Foundation, they came up with an article to disable, how to disable Privacy Sandbox. This is the pop-up that comes up if Privacy Sandbox is rolled out to your instance of Chrome. This is like a slow rollout. So they've only rolled out to, I think, 1% of the Chrome users or 4%. I'm not 100% sure. But then they've got this button which is called Got It. And there is this tweet from a person which talks about what is called a dark pattern, which says like, what does Got It mean? Like if I click on Got It, like, did I understand this? Do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? What is going on? So in this case, Got It means you leave the settings on, which is not what you understand from reading something like this. So now let's look at these alternative solutions from a privacy perspective. Like I said, ID solutions are using encryption as a marketing tool. Only disclosure of the email of the person is minimized because the email is hashed, but that's the only thing. Privacy Sandbox is similar to Apple, where Google is behind this walled garden privacy, where they control pretty much everything, all the parameters to all these privacy enhancing technologies. Lastly, privacy enhancing technologies offer very, very strong mathematical guarantees, but then again, they are very, very context dependent. They have different kinds of utility, architectural impact, performance. They require different kinds of investment, and they require different kinds of expert knowledge as well. This is a new technology that's been proposed by many tech companies, where somebody like AWS is offering a service where multiple people, who are these people on the left, can collaborate in a cloud environment, which is offering a very secure and purpose limited way to collaborate on data. So this is basically Amazon offering privacy enhancing technologies in a box where people can collaborate. One of the most important things to understand about data clean rooms is that you have to trust this cloud provider and what they're saying, which is quite a lot. Then there is IAB, which is Interactive Advertising Bureau, which is an independent self-regulation body who are offering different kinds of guidelines, including guidelines around data clean rooms. They are also offering an alternative to Privacy Sandbox to AdTech participants, and also offering some other way to manage audiences. They're coming up with all these guidances, but since they are not a standardization body, nobody is obligated to follow their standards. This was just last week. They also came up with a Privacy Sandbox task force, which is supposed to come up with all kinds of gap analysis and recommendations and stuff. Better late than never. Yeah. Lastly, let's look at regulations. I'm running out of time. I'll just briefly look at regulations. Regulations have been popping up quite a lot across the board. EU has led the way across the board. Mostly, the regulations mostly revolved around consent and free and genuine choice and informed and unambiguous consent. The users have to have given clear consent to see an ad. More recently, EU has passed Digital Markets Act and Digital Services Act, which asks about increased transparency into ads, and also bans dark patterns like the got it button that we saw. And also it bans ads based on special categories like sexual orientation, ethnicity for targeting ads. This was just a month ago. Meta was asked to stop using legitimate interest as a reason for processing behavior ads. GDPR said you have to ask for consent. Legitimate interest is not enough for you to target ads on Facebook and Instagram. For your reference, targeted advertising accounts for 97% of the company's revenue in 2022. So you can see how important this model is for Facebook or Meta in general. So what is the future outlook? The future outlook is essentially publishers owning their own data, which is basically called first party data, which is like, if I am a website, I collect data directly from my customers or users without depending on anybody else. And also I can use this data to collaborate with others in a very controlled or privacy sensitive way. And the third alternative is contextual advertisement, which is basically like what you're reading right now, ads based on that. So it's interesting to see these two red boxes that I've drawn is basically both on the advertiser side, on the publisher side. First party data activation is the first thing on their minds. This purple box is very interesting as well, which is Google Topics is very, very popular with advertisers, which is the demand side of people, but publishers hate it. This is because they will lose all control of their data and Chrome will take over all their data, basically. So publishers hate this idea and advertisers love this idea. So this is my last slide. And if I have a little time, I have like some bonus slides, but then depends on how much time I have. But then this is the last slide I want to end my talk with. So this is Ariel Garcia. She was the Chief Privacy and Responsibility Officer at this company called Worldwide. It's a New York-based ad and marketing agency. She just resigned like, I don't know, a month ago. And she wrote this op-ed on this website called Ad Exchanger, which is super popular for ad news and ad tech news. The title says an industry in conflict. It's time for tough questions and hard decisions. I have a quote from this article that I want to read out. And yeah, so this says, this industry appears absolutely determined to sleepwalk into an existential crisis, contorted by the whims and interests of monopolists that write the rules of the web, and powered by data that is often surreptitiously extracted and at times unscrupulously exploited. And while the industry stands to gain by evolving for the better, it is plagued by chronic short termism, worsened by increasing financial pressure. The thought of accountability elicits scoffs. This is absolutely true for the ecosystem right now. For all the solutions that I've shown you, there is a lot of financial pressure. People are running here and there, but at the same time, nobody wants to give up the data that's being collected. That's the end of my talk. I have a few slides that I want to talk about, but if I don't have time, I can end this here. And thank you. That's all.
Yeah, hey Sriram, please share if you have something more to share with
Okay,
everyone.
cool. Yeah. So this is like time permitting. This is something which I wanted to share, which is so everybody knows ndtv.com. It's an Indian news website. But what happens if you visit ndtv.com on a UK location? UK location, you get this pop-up banner, which says "Do not consent," right? Uh, but then if I click on Manage Options here, I get this I don't know, huge pop-up again, which has 117 vendors, and these are ad tech vendors who are collecting your data. If I visit this website in India, I won't even get this banner, but they are already collecting all this data. It's important to see how the consent is off in all of them, but then legitimate interest is on in probably most of them. This is what is called a dark pattern, which is it is impossible to expect a normal person visiting a website like this to go through this list and understand each and every one of these ad tech companies and what will they collect and what will they do with your data. Uh, if you really wanted to do that, you have to go to each privacy policy of these 117 people and see what they're storing, what their privacy policy is, etc. I found this definition to be really funny, where it says, how does legitimate interest work? Some vendors are not asking for your consent, but are using your personal data on the basis of legitimate interest. This is like a recursive definition. So they didn't even explain what legitimate interest is. They just used it in the same sentence. And I don't know, I don't know, 1,000 points for like guessing what this cross button does. Yeah. It basically says consent. Yeah. So this is like a dark pattern which is used across the board in cookie banners where there's a cross button. You click on the cross button, basically it means you accept. This is another website which is metro.co.uk in UK. They've got 549 on the first screen and 1,430 vendors on the second screen. Yeah. Nobody's expected to go through this, right? Yeah. But this is the current state of affairs. This is being fought between data protection authorities and ad tech companies, like even right now. Lastly, I wanted this was just this year in June, where this ad tech company called Criteo was fined 40 million euros for not asking for consent from users, not providing them with clear information and transparency around data collection, not erasing their data when a user asks them to erase data, and also not providing enough data about what data they're sharing with others. This is one of the biggest fines this year on an ad tech company for not properly informing the user. But all these are in the EU. So this CNIL is the French data regulator. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to leave you with, where consent is not really practical at this point of time. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much. You can email me at sriramv@duck.com. This is my LinkedIn. This is my website. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah, I see one question. Like you. What are your thoughts on the DPDP Act? Yes. So for people who don't know, DPDP Act is the Indian Data Protection Act. That's just been the bill has been passed this year, so it will turn into like an actual act next year. I am not a lawyer, So I don't have much legal advice to give here, except for my own personal opinion, which is I think it's very similar to all these other regulations, which revolve around consent as a primary way to uh, collect data. So consent becomes the legal basis for collecting data. But as you saw, consent is not practical in today's world. And that's something which unfortunately is the reality. So that's what I think about there are other things about the DPDP Act as well, like the government is given a free hand. Those things are already public and being debated, but my core uh, my core grime with the DPDP Act is, yeah, they are again choosing consent as a way to collect data, and that's something which is not good. Yeah. Any other question?
Folks, you have any other questions, please do ask. We have a few minutes for the Q&A session. You can ask and get it clarified.
I hope I did not go like super fast. Yeah, I I I was trying to cover as much ground as possible. I hope it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, the session was really informative. If you have any questions, please do ask.
Yeah, I see comments in the chat which are talking about like maybe it was quite a lot of information, but then again, AdTech is complex. So I think it was important for me to give you like the foundational knowledge before I drove in directly into AdTech. Yes, I can give a link to the PPT. Definitely, I can share the PPT with the organizers, and they can share with whoever wants to. Yeah, wants to take a look.
That works. So if the questions are like, we have no more questions. Thank you for the informative session. Like the session was really informative. We got to know about the relevant news, statistics, the privacy threat model, the privacy enhancing technologies, the alternative to cookies, and it was really detailed in the regulations that is existing to privacy in ads and whatnot, much more. The information was flowing throughout the session. Thank you so much for the session and taking your time to share views and to a speaker for the SecConf.